Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are on ayah number 188. قال الله تعالى ولا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلوا بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون. So the vocabulary first. ولا تأكلوا, this is a nahi, a prohibition. Do not eat, but we may translate it to do not consume. This would be more appropriate. So do not consume your wealth, meaning each other's wealth. بينكم, between you, meaning when you make contracts. بالباطل, باطل means falsehood. So this means to say do not take each other's wealth except by means which are permissible in the Sharia. So you could take another person's wealth by way of deceiving him, cheating him, gambling, riba, gharar, which is when you are not sure what you will receive or whether you will receive the item. So these are ways in which you can take people's wealth bil batil, meaning sinfully. He says, وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ. The verb is adla yudli, from dalu, so that's dal, lam, waw, dalu, which means bucket. So adla means to lower the bucket in the well. But then the meaning broadened and it was used in other contexts. So in this context it means do not send your wealth to the rulers, the hukam, and this would be by way of a rishwa, which is bribery. So just like you would send your bucket down the well for some benefit, which would be to bring out water, so you would send your wealth to the rulers for some benefit, which would be that the ruling is cast in your favor. لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ. The lam here is not lam of ta'lil, which means so as to, but it is the lam lil-aqiba, which would then mean that if you bribe the rulers, the aqiba, which is the consequence of that, would be that the ruling is cast in your favor and you consume fariqan, a portion of the wealth of the people, bil-ithm, with sin, meaning sinfully. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, whilst you know exactly what it is you are doing. So it's not like some kind of innocent mistake. In this ayah, Ibn Abbas has a commentary to make. He says that this ayah is about the person who takes a loan, and then when it comes to paying back the loan, he denies that he ever took out the loan. And the case goes to the authorities. He knows that this money is not his, he has to pay it back, so consuming this money would be haram for him. And Ibn Abbas is simply giving an example, and much would the early Mufassirin give a tafsir by way of example. So understand, these are merely examples, they are not exhaustion. Otherwise, there is no end to how many examples we can give to this ayah. So if we recall, Allah Jalla wa Ala started talking about rulings. He talked about the Qibla, and he talked about the Qisas, and he talked about the Wasiyah, and he went on to talking about the Siyam, with the ayah of Dua in between. And now he's talking about this financial matter of consuming other people's wealth unlawfully, and also this issue of bribery. You see, these are all ahkam which the Muslim adheres to. And this is typical of the Madaniyah surah, that they often have ahkam in them, because the Muslimin are ready to accept such rules. You cannot be giving these rules to the mushrikeen. You need to first invite them to the shahada. Okay, so reflecting on this ayah should not be too difficult. We may take that you are only allowed to take other people's wealth in a manner which the Sharia permits. We may also learn that bribery is haram because of the express prohibition. Okay, what if the judge knows that the real ruling, the true ruling, is contrary to what evidence he has been given, but he knows this from his personal knowledge? He is not allowed to judge in accordance with his personal knowledge. This is not permitted, because if he were to do that, he would be accused of favoritism. So what must he do in a case like this? If he were to judge, he would be judging in accordance with this false evidence and give a ruling which he knows to be false. So what they say in a case like this is that he refrains from giving the ruling and he refers this whole matter to another judge, let's say a second judge, and this first judge stands as a witness to give testimony in front of the second judge, and then the second judge can rule in accordance with the truth. We may also take that if a court ruling is cast in your favor, and you know that this wealth does not belong to you in actuality, then it is haram for you to consume this wealth. You must give it back, even though officially it is your wealth. Because remember, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, it will be the secrets which will come out in the open. Yawma tubla as-sarair, the day when the secrets will come into view. And you will be taken to account for the secrets that you harbored. Okay, let's take ayah number 189. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ وَلَيْسَ الْبِرُّ بِأَنْ تَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهَا ولكن البر من اتقى وأتوا البيوت من أبوابها واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. Okay, يسألونك, they ask you about the ahilla, plural of hilal, which means a crescent. Say to them, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, it is mawaqit for the people. So mawaqit from waqt, meaning time. So the hilal is for the timings of people. In those days, they did not have watches and calendars. They relied on the moon sighting. So for example, when must the debt be paid back? They did not have particular dates. They relied on the hilal. Or the length of an ijara, the leasing contract. They rely on the hilal. And like this, with so many other types of contracts, you rely on the hilal. And it is for the hajj as well, so you know when the hajj season has begun. Now the hilal is so called because it comes from the root ihlal, which means to raise the voice. When people make talbiyah for the hajj, this is called ihlal. They raise the voice, saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik until the end of it. The Prophet said, إِذَا إِسْتَحَلَّ الْمَوْلُودِ فَقَدْ وَرِث. When the baby raises his voice, when he cries, then he inherits, meaning inherits from the deceased member of his family. So what has this got to do with the hilal? Because when the people will see the hilal, which is the first section of the moon as it first appears, so the beginning of the month, they would raise their voices telling others, oh, the month has begun. Otherwise, the word for moon is qamar. And we have a whole surah named after the moon, qamar. But the first sighting of the moon, or the first piece of the moon, the hilal, is given its own name. Also, we have an interesting trivia at this point. Much do we find in the Quran, Allah telling us that the people ask you about something, then say such and such. He answers by saying, Qul, say such and such. The only place in the Quran where this takes a departure is Surah Taha, where he says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْجِبَالِ فَقُلْ يَنْسِفُهَا رَبِّي نَسْفًا. They ask you about the mountains. فَقُلْ, then say that my Rabb will completely pulverize them. Did you notice the fa in faqul? This only happens in Surah Taha, nowhere else. Now why is this? It is because when Allah tells the Prophet, Qul, say such and such, He is giving the answer to the Prophet after the question was asked by the people. Except in Surah Taha, He is giving the answer before the question was asked by the people. So In essence, what the ayah means is that if the people ask you about the mountains, then say to them that my Rabb will pulverize them. So the fa is the jawab ash-shart. If they ask you, then tell them this. He says, bir is not that you enter your homes through the back entrance. So bir meaning righteousness, it means much goodness. And the word bar meaning an open, empty land without any buildings, because it is an expansive land. So bir has this idea of being expansive in your good works. Zuhur is the plural of zahar, which means back. So every person has a back. So they would enter the homes from the back entrance. The Quraysh would... So what is this all about? When the people of Jahiliyyah would enter the ihram, they knew they were in a sacred state. And they said that we will not enter the homes through the front, because if we did so, then the roof of the house would cover us from the sky, and that would spoil our ihram. So we will climb the wall from the back and enter that way. So this would be the back garden, so that the roof does not cover us from the sky, and our ihram is not spoiled. This was their belief. Of course, it's baseless, and we do not know how it first began, but it does not matter. Allah Jalla wa Ala is refuting this belief. The Quraysh, on the other hand, would enter their homes normally from the front. So Allah Jalla wa Ala is saying, enter your homes from the front, not from the back. Because what is bir is not decided by your whims and fancies, it's decided by Allah. And He says bir is the one who has taqwa. Like we said before, bir and taqwa are essentially the same thing, unless they are mentioned side by side. Note how He says that bir, righteousness, is the one who has taqwa. So it would mean that the one who has taqwa is the bar, the one who enacts righteousness. It's a type of mubalagha, or exaggeration. Like people say, Fulan is adl, such and such a person is adl, which means justice. What they mean is such and such a person is most just. And He says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That is clear enough. So reflecting on this ayah, we can take the Sahaba are asking this question, so they want to learn. And that's a manqaba, a virtue of theirs. And asking questions was permitted if it is a genuine question. It's just that useless questions were not permitted. We see that Allah Jalla wa Ala is not detached from the Prophet and the people. He wants to guide people. That's why He answers these questions. We pick up from this ayah an extremely vital point, that the lunar months is what Allah Jalla wa Ala has designated for mankind. Notice He says, مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. As for this Gregorian calendar, January, February, and so on, then this is man-made. We see that some months have 30 days, others 31 days, others 29 or even 28 days, without any particular reason. And then furthermore, there is no natural way to decide when one month changes and the other one begins. It's all arbitrary and man-made. Rather, the lunar calendar is what Allah Jalla wa Ala created and intended for whole of mankind. So, to sum up on a few matters, Yawm al-Jum'ah is the day which Allah Jalla wa Ala intended for the whole of mankind, not Saturday or Sunday. Facing the Kaaba is what Allah intended for the whole of mankind, not facing the Baytul Maqdis or facing the east or wherever else. The lunar month is what Allah intended for mankind, not the Gregorian calendar. When you realize these matters, only then will you realize that Allah Jalla wa Ala has perfected this Sharia for us and guided us to where mankind was meant to be guided. Walillahi alhamd. We find the important lesson that righteousness is determined by Allah, not by fashions and fads and whims. And we take from this order to enter the homes from the proper doors, not just the lesson about how to enter homes, because that's an extremely restrictive ruling. Rather, we can expand, and we may say that any time you do anything in life, do it the proper way. So this is making an analogy with entering the homes through the proper doors. So anytime you want to do anything, do it the proper way, not cutting corners or doing it in a crooked way. Okay, what if somebody does enter his home from the back entrance? Is this haram? Well, if there is a need to do so, then we cannot say it is haram. It is only haram when you believe that doing so is a righteous action, because then this becomes a bid'ah, an innovation. But if you do it due to some need that you have, then that is permissible. It's just an ordinary action, because you are not believing that there is any virtue attached to this particular mode of entrance. And we may also take the obligation of having taqwa, and we may finally take that taqwa, it is what leads to ultimate success. People define success as having a lucrative job and a luxury lifestyle maybe, or a high standard of living. But Allah Jalla wa Ala defines success completely differently. Success is only for those who have taqwa, not for those who are billionaires with a luxury yacht and a private jet. Wallahu a'lam.